Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the drama going on in Britain about what they call Mickey Mouse degrees, or bullshit degrees, if you like, from universities and colleges. And you could really say the same sort of talks going on all over the Western world at the moment. And do these Mickey Mouse, these bullshit degrees exist, like, Latin American lesbian studies and so on? And are they in any way useful to society, or indeed useful to the students? So, some of these students are coming out with these bullshit degrees of, how to inject more lesbian theory into movies or something like that, and they're spending the thick end of $500,000 to get their degree. I mean, where do these people get that sort of money? And why would you think $500,000 studying absolute bullshit like that was going to be? Now, the globalists are all for it. It handily subverts society and reduces everyone's confidence in institutions, and leads, if you like, it's part of the stepping stones to anarchy that the globalists seem to want and relish. But let's go back in time to when these Mickey Mouse, as they call them, degrees began. Now, when I graduated from high school to college or to university, a very small, this is in Australia, a small number of people, so of the kids who started high school, year one high school, that finished high school, went through junior and senior high, then graduated to university. It was around 3%, slightly less than 3% of the kids that started high school actually went on to university. So it was a fairly elite sort of, as in academically elite outcome. That it was primarily only the brightest kids were going to university. Now, there was always the kids, the wastrel, lazy kids of the super rich. They would, the rich dad would make a nice donation to the university and get their IQ minus 5 million kid accepted, just for the Ivy League sort of resume, CV type credentialing. But apart from that, and there's only always ever a very, very, very small number of people who have that sort of wealth and influence. So society can kind of carry that without really suffering too much. So it was really the brightest kids that went in. Now, those were the sort of the final days, if you like, of the merit system. Already that system was the beginnings of the dilution of that were going on in order to create equity outcomes where minorities, as they called them, would get equal outcomes with the boys. Now, I remember at the time, if a girl in any subject, or the main subjects at least, if a girl came even in the top 10 of students in the exam, remember we're talking strictly pass or fail here. If a girl even came into the top 10, then it was viewed as, there was an intake of breath. It was that unusual, that rare. So that's how rare it was in a merit system. And if you looked at the bottom half of the students in exam results, because they used to read the exam results out, if you looked at the bottom half of the students, then girls were super overrepresented in the bottom half, and the only boys in the bottom half were ones that were clearly severely lacking in intellectual gifts. Now, it wasn't that all the girls at the bottom were stupid necessarily. Quite a few of them were, but they were lazy. They just wouldn't put the work in. I remember the weekly. You had to hand in a weekly assignment. Then you had, say, each month you had another assignment sort of worksheet to hand in, and there are various homework type things that you had to do. And then every term there was a test. Now, I remember it was the girls just weren't handing in their assignments and their projects. And if they did, it was so half-assed. It was something that I discovered even it continued on into the the workplace. I noticed that sort of attitude continued in there for girls. So whereas boys would hand in all their, so the boys were all handing in their, with a couple of exceptions, the boys were all doing their work on time, and a lot of the girls went, I didn't have time, and they'd come out with these crazy excuses, some of which were quite funny, and everyone in the class would laugh and that sort of thing. And the teachers seemed to indulge them, I thought, far too much. And there were even situations where the teachers would hand back the assignments that were of such poor quality, hand back to the girls and say to the girls, look, you've got another weekend to do it, and that sort of thing. And a habit that I picked up actually from school, and I was giving cadet trainees who were doing tests in this company, I was only gave the girls another weekend to do it. But anyway, that was sort of the situation. So girls just weren't, and it wasn't for lack of encouragement. I remember teachers, trying to encourage girls to do work and to finish their assignments and do their worksheets, and to no avail, or little avail. So there was no surprise that of the 3% of kids that went to university, that the overwhelming majority, 75, 80% plus, were boys. And the number of courses that were available to girls were, the classic sociology thing where everybody passes and nobody fails and everybody gets, a participation trophy. Those sort of courses didn't exist then. So let's move forward in time now. The political correctness, the wokeism, let's get equal outcomes. Why don't girls going to university as before there used to be a huge hue and cry about, well, girls aren't equal to the number of boys going to university. Something terrible is happening. We have to correct it. Only massive government intervention can fix this, because misogyny and patriarchy, it'll never happen through natural means. But that's not true. If girls had passed the exams, as in a strictly pass or fail system, then they would have got to university in much bigger numbers. They just weren't passing the exams. It wasn't an issue of patriarchy or something. That's nonsense. So in order to get the equal outcomes, they just lowered the bar. So I said, okay, well, instead of having to get, whatever the entrance mark to university, it actually was almost like not completely, but had hallmarks of an auction system. If you happen to be in a year where a lot of kids were doing well, then the number of university places wouldn't increase. Well, they did marginally, but they wouldn't increase. There were, for example, 100 places at university. I'm just using round numbers here, but so if a lot of kids passed, there was still only 100 places, so they'd only take the top 100 kids. Students who sat for the graduation exams, they'd only take the top 100 kids, and they would come in, even though 1 million kids passed the test, for example, only the top 100. So it was kind of an odd sort of auction system that only the brightest kids were getting through. As much as that would have been disappointing to kids who may have worked hard but just missed out, my folks wanted me to do medicine, for example. And I missed out, not by a vast amount, but it's strictly pass or fail. I missed out. It happened that year that the entry level, for fuck's sake, to get into medicine was like 86%, and so if you got 78%, which would be considered pretty decent, it just wasn't good enough to get into medicine in that year. Another year it might have been. So again, strictly pass or fail, but so they just lowered the bar and just kept on lowering it. So instead of, so they expanded the number of places and then lowered the bar as well, so that the numbers started to become very equal, suggesting that they were loading the dice in favour of minorities. Well, not suggesting, it was quite clear they were. So, and also adding a number of courses, and this blossomed, the gender studies, the peace studies, the lesbian dance theory, and black studies, and all LGBTQ activism studies, and so on, and so climate studies. So all these things came along with a very, very low bar of entry, And again, a very low bar in getting the degree. I don't know anyone that didn't get the degree. Now, I've red penned, some people I know. There's this woman I know who wanted to get a master's in international business studies, and I was quite surprised. I didn't even know she was studying that or going for that, the master's. I wouldn't have thought she had enough brain power to get a lesbian dance theory degree or something. But anyway, she already had a degree in business studies that stunned me. I almost couldn't believe it when she told me. And she's doing her master's, like the thesis for the master's, and it was the final essay, if you like. And so she was a bit nervous about it, and I thought, I don't know why. I mean, you're almost guaranteed to pass. She was white and not a lesbian, so but she asked me would I go over it and give it the red pen and all that sort of stuff. So I looked at it and I was staggered that anyone would hand that sort of work in. The quality of the work was absolutely piss poor, diabolically bad, not just falling short of the mark by an inch or two or something, diabolically bad. If a mid-level high school student handed that work in, I'd have flunked it. That's how bad it was, and it was so bad that I just couldn't red pen it. I thought the whole thing will be just nothing but red pen if I give it the. So I looked at the most egregious errors in there and said to her, well, look, these are maybe things you'd like to look at. And given how bad it was, I realized that somebody of that low caliber, I couldn't go in and say, you're accountable for doing good quality work, because she would get all defensive and take it personally because the work was that bad. So I just thought I'll pick out the most egregious things and say, look, this and that, and so and so and so and so. And I didn't even want to sort of hit her with. So just have a look at this and see what you think. You may want to do a bit more research here. And so I was quite gentle in how I approached it, but I was as stunned as anything by the way she came back, which was no, facts don't matter. Why would I worry about the fact? Why would I worry about whether something's accurate or not? Or why would I worry about whether I got the dates right, or this right, or the names right, or the places right? Who cares? And she was just blithely, no, I don't give a shit. That's not even relevant. Now, when they do all these things, these business studies or in this instance, international business studies, they offer a whole range of topics. So you don't actually have a set amount of or a set requirement that's standardized. You actually get to pick from 10 or so different things. And one of the different perspectives on the business studies thing, one of them is, and it's particularly put there, what is the effect of the changing international business situation on women? I mean, what sort of fucking question is that? What discipline and rigor can you apply to that sort of a question? You can't. It's a bullshit question put in there to give women an easy way to go. But she still, they don't say, and she answered the question on how lesbians are affected by, that's not in the degree. She's got a master's in international business studies, and it's a high distinction. So as far as anyone looking at that is concerned, unless they know something about what's going on in the university, when they look at that, they go, well, holy crap, this woman's really well qualified. Wow. And she might get hired into some bullshit public service job. And so we've got this low IQ woman who's talking to her. I mean, I'm if her IQ is 100, it's just this low IQ woman who's got a degree in that and now a master's in international business studies, all by talking about how black lesbians are affected by business and this sort of thing. So these are the standards. This is how much they've lowered the standards for entry level and to give them a degree, and even that is soft marked. So you've got a vast number of people running around who've had a much less than rigorous education, and they're running around with these degrees, but they're in debt for some serious money. A lot of the younger people who I know, unless they've got well-to-do folks who can pay for the degree, or if they can stay with their folks indefinitely. Even some people in the street that I live in, the girls done some finance or something, I think it was, that she's done, and she's going on to do a master's, I think. So she's like, so I think she's going to finish it this year, and she's 24. Now she's living folks aren't rich, but they're giving us some money towards the degree, but she they're giving us spending money, and she's got some bullshit job she does for a few hours a week that they've bought her a car and they pay for all the upkeep and the registration. She's able to live at home and not have to meet any cost. They feed her and look after her and pay for the electricity. Anyway, so she doesn't have to contribute anything to the household. And again, that they subsidise her, not fully, but certainly generously, I think. But she's still looking at given the amount of money that the jobs pay when kids finished college, finished university, she's still looking at, even if she lives with her folks, she's still looking at more than 10 years before she's got the loan paid off. So before she can start her life in terms of thinking about getting maybe married, having a family, or buying property, she's going to be 35 years old before life effectively begins. So this idea of putting people in huge debt for bullshit degrees, and then, again, it's the low level of rigor. This is a girl who would have dropped out of high school at 15 if academic merit was the issue, but she's been waved through into senior high school and waved through into college, then gifted a degree and so on that she couldn't have earned in the real world. So now coming now to the issue of apprenticeships. So what the blurb is in Britain is, why don't we take the resources away from these bullshit Mickey Mouse degrees? There's been studies and so on, and put that money into apprenticeships, things like electricians or plumbers or whatever, carpenters and so on. Now there's a shortage of these people around, tradies. There's a shortage. I mean, this is for a few reasons. Firstly, is when the government was actively, this is all across the Western world, actively encouraging kids to stay on to high school and go to university. So remember, only 3% of kids were going to university 50 years ago. Now it's at 50%, or depending on which country you're in. But there are some countries that governments are directly budgeting, so we want 60% of kids to go to university. It ceased to be a merit-based sort of marketplace, if you like, of intellect. The government is saying, no, we want 6 out of 10. They will go on to university. So the education system sort of has to make it happen. And of course, the first casualty in that is merit. But anyway, kids who would have gone on to go who would have gone to trade school. Now, trade school used to start at 14 years and 6 months old, I think was the youngest you could start a trade, certainly when I was a kid anyway. Maybe it's the same, I don't know. So 14 years and 6 months. So kids would drop out of high school. Now, in those days, the teachers would come to you and say, look, you're not doing any good at school. You're a hopeless student, or you just can't be bothered. You don't do your homework. You just don't give a shit. Why don't you go off and get a job? Consider getting into a trade, making some money and so on. But you started at 14 years at 6 months. So the idea would be that you would live with your folks until, and most apprenticeships were either 4 or 5 years. So let's assume 5 years. So you'd be 19 years old, give or take, and then you'd become a fully qualified, electrician, or whatever it was, a plumber or something, and then you would, go and get a job, or you'd as an apprentice, you would then go and work for a guy, an older guy, who would then hand over the practice to you, the business to you, as in the plumbing business or whatever it might be. Or you would start up your own business. Now that was typically sort of how it worked, and then by 21, you'd be somewhat established in some sort of situation relating to your trade, and then by 23 you'd be married with children. So that was kind of how the process would work. Now, the wage that's paid to a first-year apprentice is pretty low, as you can imagine, and justifiably so. The tools that you use are typically supplied by your employer, and as you work your way through the apprenticeship, you'll start acquiring tools of the trade and so on. Now, the idea of the apprenticeship was that you would start young, and again, you would be paid shit money, but you're only 14, for goodness sake, living with your folks. It became a little bit different when kids are at school or being kept on at school. That apprenticeship, people were entering apprenticeships at age 19, so 5 years later than it was. But then they would say, well, if I want to become an apprentice, like a mechanic or something, but they're being paid a wage so low it barely covers their cost of travelling to and from work. So they have to live with their folks, and so they're going to be living with their folks until they're 24, but if assuming they go into apprenticeship. But as many kids have told me, why would I become an apprentice and get some shit money? I can get more money working as a bartender, or working as working as a barista or something like that. So why would I? It's a dirty, uncool job. Whereas barista, at least I can check out the hot guys or the hot chicks or something as they come. So it's a different sort of attitude to the time it takes to get the qualifications or the certification in the case of an apprentice. So it created an artificial shortage in apprentices. A few people were coming through, or a much reduced number of people were coming through the trade colleges and trade schools, so that there was an artificial shortage, which was self-inflicted by all the Western governments, by the way. They were all thinking, well, all the future jobs are going to be computer programming. No one's going to need plumbers. Well, let me tell you, everyone needs fucking plumbers, or trade people generally, electricians and so on. Especially given in insurance companies won't insure a whole lot of things unless a certified plumber or electrician or trade person has signed off on it, or an engineer or something. So there's that, the increasing influence of insurance companies. Well, we're not going to insure that unless you've got an electrician has done it. A certified electrician has done this. So there's issues there, but the primary issue was the artificial shortage of tradies coming through. Now, there's then a second level of issue here where in the gig economy, electricians were being needed, or tradies generally were being needed for short-term gigs, sometimes out in remote areas like a mine site in the middle of fucking nowhere or something. So there was instead of having a business where the plumber would employ apprentices and would have lots of customers in the local geographical area, that sort of thing. Instead of that, the new an increasing number of tradie jobs, fully qualified tradesman jobs, started to get drawn into the gig economy. So why would you quit your practice in the city, and you've built up and worked hard to build up, just to get a 3-month gig on a fucking mine site somewhere, and then you're out of work? So the type of jobs that were coming up for tradies weren't the sort of jobs that were typical of how a trade system and building up your customer base and building up a loyal customer base, whether it be a mechanic at the local shop, repair shop, or again, plumbers, electricians, or anything like that, unless you had a government job for life, and those jobs were now fewer in number. So there's a lot of factors were combining to make it not worth being a tradie, as well as starting the trade at 19. So a lot of mistakes there. Now the central issue, get rid of the Mickey Mouse degree? Well, they never should have existed in the first place, and it's a cruelty beyond belief, in my view, to get low IQ kids into university, put them in horrendous levels of debt, for bullshit degrees that aren't worth a pinch of shit. That I think that's outrageous. So moving resources from those degrees into trades. Well, okay, sure. Trades are far more valuable to society than a lesbian studies degree. But then a number of other things need to change as well before it's worthwhile for people to get into a trade, and having gig economy trade jobs isn't useful. That's not going to get us anywhere. So a number of other peripheral adjustments need to be made if moving resources from one sector to another is going to be viable. Now, be sure if government is putting money into it, which they're proposing to do in Britain at the moment, or that's the conversation anyway, then if government's involved in it, then you can bet your last penny that they're going to say, oh, well, now we're putting money into this. We want 50% of all tradespeople to be black lesbians. And that's so they're going to reduce standards there so that what once were high standard, high quality tradespeople revered the world over are now going to be people that can barely, put on a light switch without fucking it up, because they're going to lower the standards and insist on equal outcomes and minority representation and so on. Now, there's a trade school that is a teacher I'm aware that the teacher I know that teaches not a trade, but so we were catching up for a few of us were catching up for a coffee, and I happened to be there as I think it was the mechanics trade school was coming out. There was a couple of lesbians in there, but who I doubt would stay the course till the end. But there was a number of they were all boys. All of them were boys. So this all of them were boys. So this is an indication of when the government activists get to have a look at it, they go, oh, look at this, all boys. Oh, what are we going to do? How are we going to get more black lesbians into this? So they get, if resources are moved into trades, you can guarantee that government activists will fuck it up royally, and will, as a society, be no better off than we are. It'll just be moving the activism from lesbian studies degrees and just moving it into electronics or mechanics trade schools. That's all it'll happen. So I'm not sure it'll work out in the end. But if it's a merit system and they're not looking at just putting these people into the gig economy, then I think it could work out quite well. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.